Hello, I'm Larry McAllister, and most of you know because I have a lot of you on Facebook as friends. I'm a retired pastor and also retired from the counseling field. I'm coming to you today because I know this is a time of anxiety for many of you, and many of you are probably suffering through a little bit of what we might call cabin fever right now. Let me start out by saying, as a former pastor and as a member of the church now, I'm very thankful for my church and for many churches today to be online sharing a message. Now, if you've never done radio or television, it's very difficult to look at a mic and try to imagine 100 people or 300 people out there whenever you have a empty congregation or worship center. But today I would like to use a little bit of both sides, but more on the counseling side today. A lot of you are dealing with anxiety today. And I just want to share with you how thankful I am for those churches that have been online because they brought a little bit of normal routine, I hope, to you today. But let's talk a little bit about anxiety. Let's talk about fear. Let's go back in history. First of all, we'll go back to the Spanish flu of 1918, 1919. I first became acquainted with this historically when I would walk through cemeteries and I would see almost entire families who had died. Now, some people have estimated on the short side that almost 50,000 people in America died of that Spanish flu that came through. Some people will go as far as to say because the recordings were not as intense as they are now, that as many as 500,000 died. It was a flu without any known way of trying to contain it. And so it spread through America and the world really fast. I grew up in the 50s. I was in high school, or not high school, but elementary school in the 50s, high school in the 60s, and also college in the 60s. One of the big fears back then was polio. Many of my friends had polio as I was growing up, and so there was this fear of polio, and so finally in about 1954, 1955, we had the vaccine that would help us with polio. I remember getting into a large bus and driving to the end of the county, and the county health nurse stood us up and gave us all our shots, if you remember that term. And then we have dealt with other situations. We've had the swine flu, if you remember that. We've had the Hong Kong flu. We've had other pandemics. Then what makes this one so different? I think it's different for several reasons. One, back in 1918, the average age of a person dying was about 60. Today it's 80 to 90, and many are living to be 100. I believe that we didn't have any radio or television to give us warnings and to tell us what to do, so it was much larger then. I think even in the 50s, when we deal with the polio and the swine flu and the Hong Kong flu, and now we're dealing with this coronavirus. The difference between this and perhaps some of the other stuff, some people say, what's the difference between it and the flu? It's far more contagious, and especially to those of you who are my age. I'm a baby boomer. I'll soon be 72 years of age. I had major heart surgery 10 years ago. I'm a diabetic, and I'm a little overweight. And so my immune system is not as strong as it used to be. And so people are telling you, don't come around me. And believe you me, I'm doing everything I can. I am staying in. I am getting a little bit tired of looking at the various rooms in my house. But what can I do? Because all of us have this fear. Let's deal with fear first. Fear can be dealt with by having knowledge. Now, knowledge means going to places like the CDC and places like that and getting general knowledge about what is truly going on. Now, if you listen to your televisions, you listen to your radios, you're going to have one group of people say, everything's fine, let's don't worry about it. Then you're going to have another doomsday type of news that's given to you. So I think it's important that you have knowledge. Two, that you set a way of protecting yourself. One of the ways is doing what we're doing right now. In fact, the Bible tells us in one place there is nothing wrong with God's believers taking themselves and removing themselves from the society for protection for a while. And so I think that's important to realize. Number three is, as best you can, obey all of the things that you're told to do. My poor hands are starting to look like raisins where I've washed them so much. And I'm staying in the house. So, it's not something that we need to make light of, but it is something that we need to sort of look at, not in a serious mode that makes us feel like the sky is falling. It's not falling. Let me tell you something. God's still in control, and God will take care of us. Now, what can you do? What can I do? Well, I think if you deal with fear or anxiety, is one, don't cocoon yourself up in the house. Do you have property? I have 2/3 of an acre. Get out and walk on it. Walk down to the road. Walk down to the creek. As long as you stay 6 to 10 feet away from other people, you're okay. And so go and do things like that. Go sit out on a porch when it's a nice day. 10 years ago when I had my heart surgery, 5 bypasses, the doctor said I had to stay in for a month. Literally do rarely anything for a month. And so this was his advice to me. He said, go get you a nice comfy chair. I went, had somebody buy me a nice comfy chair. He said, set it in front of a window, which I did, or my family did. I didn't. And he said, because this was early fall, he said, sit in front of that window and watch the leaves turn. You know what? I did. Do you know what? It helped. Don't cocoon in. Get out on your porch. You're safe there. Sit down. Enjoy the sun. Enjoy the various things that are going on in your life. And you will find that it will be much better for you. I think